for that. I'm super excited to be here today at ServerlessDays in Milan to talk about serverless, because serverless has actually made my life better. And who am I, and how has this impacted my life? Well, I'm an engineer for the Cloudflare Workers team, which is the serverless platform for Cloudflare. And I'm also a fat baby. I am a fat baby when I was younger, and I'm a fat baby now when it comes to developer tools, that is. So I think it's important when we think about tools, especially developer tools, what makes a really good one? Because I was a fat baby when I cried learning terrible tools that in the end served me little to no value. And I've also cried my ways through learning some really great tools. So I think it's important when we embark on this new hype serverless to think about it as a tool for us. And is serverless really a tool that will stand the test of time? And tools, I think, that stand the test of time are ones that really make us developers happy. So I think what makes us developers happy is what my college professor would say makes us lazy, which I believed him then, but now I've learned in industry that's extremely the wrong word to use. Not only because it's politically incorrect and rude, but it's extremely not true. Because developers, we would actually rather spend more time and energy automating something rather than repeating the same curl command 3 times, which actually takes up more cognitive brain function and also takes up more time. So it's really not lazy at all. I think what makes us happy is when we developers aren't able to write less code to do more. When we developers are able to not focus on the redundant, tedious, robotic task, but actually enabled to create. So us developers fall in love with tools when we are able to actually create something. So this talk is going to be about the most beautiful and romantic on-screen relationship of all times, which, if you can't see it, it is the sibling relationship between Jaime and Cersei Lannister. And disclaimer, inserted a lot of Game of Thrones references in this talk, and I apologize. To those who were into the show, because those that were into the show, season 8 was terrible, and that's why I had to keep this in. And for those who haven't been into the show, like, you guys are actually lucky ones, because it ended terribly, if you haven't heard. So, just kidding, it's not going to be about Game of Thrones and Cersei and Jaime, but it will be about how long-lived tools are not just practical, but they are tools that actually solve a magnitude of problems. So first I'm going to go over what exactly it means to be a useful long-lived tool, and examples of long-lived usefulness in some popular tools, and then how we can apply all of this to serverless. So what does it actually mean to be useful? And according to Google, which is right about everything, being useful means to be practical, used in a practical purpose, or in several ways. But what I've found is my favorite tools have actually done both. So I'm going to turn the or actually into an and. That to be an extremely useful tool, you need to be both practical and useful in several ways. So everyone's heard of Q-tips, right? Or cotton swabs. There's over 550 billion units shipped worldwide. So people really love Q-tips, and they've been around for over 100 years. And what actually has made Q-tips be a successful tool? Well, we can look at how they're practical. And sure, they're cheap in that you can have a few euros, can buy you hundreds of them. And they're also accessible in that I can go anywhere in the world and find a Q-tip or cotton swab. And I can go in a convenience store. I can go into someone's house and probably find a Q-tip. And they're also easy to use because they're just sticks with cotton on them. But I think what makes Q-tips really spectacular is the fact that they can be used in so many ways. So Q-tips were originally designed to actually clean your ears. But as that man in the picture shows, that's not actually what they're safely used for. And actually, some countries even outlaw marketing Q-tips now for cleaning your ears, because it's dangerous. But they've also been used in medicine, makeup, putting on or off, and they can even pick doors, because growing up, my 2 older sisters would lock me out of the room, but I still got in because I had a Q-tip, which is more effective than bobby pins or paper clips I've found. So I really love Q-tips, and Q-tips are useful, and I have them in my backpack all the time. Gotta have a Q-tip. But okay, so Q-tips are fun to think about, but like, how do we actually apply this to the developer world? And thinking of a tool that many of us have heard of, GitHub. And I don't work for GitHub, so I can say this, but I really, really love GitHub. And like, what makes me really love GitHub, like ever since I was like not even a programmer in college, I used GitHub, but like I continue to love it. I think it's because it's useful. Other people feel the same way. People loved GitHub so much before there was a paid tier that people were begging to send the founders a check to pay for it, because they were upset that they couldn't pay for something that they were hosting their code on. So what makes it so great? Well, it's practical again, in that it's free. There's a free tier to use, which is great. It's reliable in that many enterprises host their code on this, all the way from Google, Mozilla, to IBM. Everyone has a GitHub repo. And it also uses the commonly known version control system of Git, so it's easily accessible. But I think what makes GitHub particularly spectacular is the several ways part. So it was designed to, the founders of GitHub were open source contributors, and they found themselves having to literally email patches back and forth with the maintainers of their open source. So it'd be like, okay, here's a patch, here's my email explaining what it does, and then the maintainers would email back, okay, need to remove that semicolon, and then it was a back and forth. So they actually built it for themselves. But what it's become is so much more than that. GitHub is now more useful, we say, in your LinkedIn profile. And this isn't even just true for software developers. This is true for anyone, I think, in the software industry. You should have some kind of GitHub. And then there's also things like GitHub Pages, which are really cool, and so much more. So GitHub, I really, really love, again. And if I felt this way about every tool, then I would be no better than Tyrion Lannister, who is known for falling in love really easy. And, well, that didn't end so well for either parties. So I think when we think of serverless, we need to think, okay, why do we actually really love this tool? And I know we've heard like 1,000,001 definitions of serverless today, but I think that, we save the best for last, which is my definition. Just kidding. But mine is the shortest and probably a little incomplete. But I define serverless as compute without having to think about machine resource allocation. And then back to the definition of useful, able to be used for practical purpose and in several ways. Okay, so again, going to the practical part. So to not be able to have to think about machine resource allocation, and for it to be practical, it should probably be able to be available everywhere and anytime, which I think most every cloud provider pretty much does. Like, we can talk about which cloud providers have more POPs, and we can think about that most everyone has time as well, because your serverless functions always should be available for a request. So those are like easy check marks. But where I think it gets a little complicated is when we talk about reasonably priced and speed, because a lot of serverless platforms have to sacrifice either the price or the speed. And we call this cold starts. And I really just like this meme because Jamie Lannister was trying to take a break in the cold. But Cloudflare's luckily figured out the whole cold start thing by something called isolates. So we don't have to spin up servers a complete container every time. It can actually use some shared memory there. So, okay, sure, like serverless, we can say like it's practical overall because it's reasonably priced and fast as well. So that's interesting and very important overall. But and I'm not here to sell you on that, but I think that these are just aspects that are things that get your boss signed off on, saying, okay, it's fast, it's cheap, can we now use it? And they're kind of not what make us really love tools. So what makes me really love serverless is these little hacks I've been able to put together. So while developing on the platform, I was originally just trying to dog food, and we do that a lot at our company, but I found that I was using it for personal projects and other things as well. And I think the little hacks I've come up with are what really made me the most excited about the tool. So browsers and I have a really rocky relationship. I love browsers because I trust them with my life, and that Gmail is my life, and I can have that on my browser, and I can also surf Flickr and Reddit and whatever, and I can trust everyone. But they also have made my developer life a little annoying at times because I've had to deal with these CORS issues, which is just I don't want to think about security. I just want to talk to API.com right now. So for those who don't know, CORS is when you are developing front-end code and you're hey, I'm in the browser tab. I want to be able to call API.com. Oh, cool, it kind of works. Oh, maybe not. But I want to be able to call API.com, and but I'm really the owner of mysite.com. So there are some traditional solutions to this, and they're okay. They can get the job done, but I think they're a pain. So one way is you could have access to API.com, and you could go modify the headers, and then you could also make requests from your server at mysite.com, the site I own. So the first solution would look something like this. And I've actually done this before, which I know is not the best way to do it, but going into, if you own API.com, which a lot of the times you won't, then you can go in all the Nginx and then go insert headers for each request method. And yeah, this probably isn't the prettiest Nginx code, but you'd have to do this for every location block too, and it's just a huge pain and headache. And it's not the best way to do it. Another way people do it is making the call directly on mysite.com. So this would mean going all the way through the cloud, whatever cloud provider you're on, or the World Wide Web, and going all the way to mysite.com. Then mysite.com has to go back all the way to the World Wide Web, and then back all the way to you. So it's way more latency introduced, and also you don't want to have to modify the code on mysite.com when really it was just a front-end request. A request that could have been made from the front end. So the serverless solution makes all this way simpler and faster. And the way I did this was just set up an endpoint on mysite.com called external, and then whatever's after the external path is the server that I want to call. So now we can see that instead of going all the way back to API.com, it's all just being done on the cloud. And what this looks like is ridiculously simple. So again, what we want to be able to run is API.com or whatever host.com on the browser. But instead, I can only run, because of CORS, I can only run requests to mysite.com. So I'm going to now do mysite.com/fetch and then API.com. And this is literally can be done in under 10 lines of code. And I made these line widths really short, so probably even less than that in reality, but I just set up an event listener, and this is using Cloudflare's workers syntax, which is based off the service worker API, and so it's set up an event listener, and I say, hey, if the URL has external in it, I'm going to now go and strip out that external request URL, and I'm now going to make this same exact request with the post body and headers and all that, but now to the external request, but I'm still going to be pretending on mysite.com. So I went over that really quick, and I'll be around after if there's more questions. But there's one little more hack. So there's been a time where I need to set up integration testing, And all I really want is just some service somewhere that can just return JSON for my integration tests. And I want this to be able to work with CI, and I want it to be able to work locally. So with traditional solutions to get these tests to pass, I would actually have to go set up a dev client in my code, which I don't even like reading like dev clients in my code. I'm not saying that's a bad way to do it, but yeah, it just confuses things. And then, or the other is like set up a node or other server running locally. But again, this doesn't work in CI, so that's not really the best solution either. So doing this with serverless, I set up a very simple function again called raw JSON response, which just returns a response of, and sets the content type, and then returns some raw JSON. And then I'm going to set an event listener on this URL called fake JSON that's just going to return this, whatever raw JSON I need it to return for my test to pass, or other things too. And so those were just 2 really small hacks, and there's so many other things you can do and that I've done that I've made me really, really love serverless. And it's the reason I love it is because it fixes these little annoying things, and it's made my developer life easier. So serverless, is it useful? Well, it's practical, we've kind of decided, but what's really cool is that it can be used in several and even kind of unprofessional ways that I've shown. So I highly recommend just trying it out. And this is the Cloudflare Workers previewer, which makes it really easy because you can just deploy right there, and it's free. And we even provide a domain name, so you don't have to do all that DNS stuff. We also have a CLI that now does WASM and KV and all that good stuff. And we've designed a template gallery. So if you don't even want to write code, you can just copy-paste some code. So I highly encourage you to sign up, if not for Cloudflare Workers, for some other serverless platform, and see what you can hack out, and see if you can find fun little things that have made your life easier. So again, apologies for all the Game of Thrones references. And the truth is, the real reason I couldn't remove all the Game of Thrones things from my slide is my cat's named Cersei. So I have to not give up on Game of Thrones now and still be a fan. She already has her cat birth certificate, so. But yep, that's all I had. Thank you.